Okay, so there are few more things which we have to learn about lambda. So you will be seeing lambda a lot in the next lectures. So there are two type of invocation when we use lambda function. So there is synchronous invocation and there is asynchronous invocation. So first let's understand what is synchronous versus asynchronous. So whenever there is a service or an application which sends a request to another service, and if you get a response back or you want to wait for the response from that service, then it is called a synchronous invocation. And when we just want to send the request and the server doesn't send us a response, or we don't want to wait for the response, that is called asynchronous invocation. Now asynchronous invocation is beneficial when you have a lot of events or messages which you want to process quickly. At that time you could use asynchronous invocation. And synchronous invocation is useful when you want to make sure that our request was processed completely. And yes, in asynchronous there is a chance that your request won't be completed. So everything has benefits of its own. And now in terms of lambda, again we have synchronous versus asynchronous invocation here. So there are some services in AWS which will do synchronous invocation. So there is SQS, there is API gateways also. Obviously, you need response from your APIs. There are others also. So let's see what synchronous, how synchronous actually works here. So this is an SQS which is connected to Lambda. So whenever there is a message present here, Lambda will fetch it and it will process it, and if there is any error it will send the message to SQS will see it, it will try to do a retry, and you can specify this number of retries, and after those retries are completed, then your processing will stop. Then we have asynchronous invocation. Now in asynchronous invocation, S3 bucket will send the message or event to lambda function. Now S3 doesn't care. It will be like, do whatever you want with this message, I don't care. Now one thing to note in asynchronous invocation is that you have a event queue here. So there is an event queue in lambda, and whenever this messages, the asynchronous messages are sent from any of the services, it will get stored in this queue, and then your lambda will try to process them. And there are also retries which your lambda can do on these messages. So if your application fails or the lambda processing fails, then by default lambda will try to do retry 2 times, and even after 2 retries it is not completed, it will discard that message. Now there are other things which you can do to make sure your message will be sent somewhere else in case of a failure. So let's go to AWS console now and see how to do that. So here I have created a lambda function and I have connected to SQS. Okay, so this invocation from SQS to lambda would be synchronous invocation. For asynchronous invocation, you can go to configuration and asynchronous invocation, and here you can see that the number of retries it has is 2. Now, since we have connected to SQS using Lambda, this is not an asynchronous invocation, and you cannot change that type. Remember that. For some of the AWS services, the invocation would be synchronous, for some, it would be asynchronous. So, whenever you are using a resource or you are connecting it to Lambda, make sure what kind of invocation it is doing on the backend. So, let's go to SQS and we will attach a DLQ there. We'll create another video on DLQ, but for the time being, I'll create a DLQ, and I will attach it here. Um, Maximum retries I will keep it as 2. Okay, So now we have a queue and we have a DL queue. So what will happen from this synchronous invocation of lambda and SQS? It will try 2 times and then it will send the message to DLQ. So let's send a message. I have already updated the code in the lambda so that it will fail. I have added raise value here, raise value error here, so it will always fail. Now let's send a message from SQS and see what happens. So I have sent the message and I'll pause for a minute so it can complete its processing. See you guys in a bit. Okay, we are back. So from the lambda function, you could go to CloudWatch and see the logs there. So you can see it retried 2 times. Here is the first start, here is the second start, and after the 2 retries, it actually sent that message to DLQ. So if you go to the queues, now in the queue you have this message in the DLQ, and if you poll for it, poll basically means fetch, and it's the same message that we had before. Okay, so we have seen the synchronous invocation. Now let's go to SNS and we will create a SNS topic. So remember, SNS, S3 both do asynchronous kind of invocation with lambda. So we will delete this and we have to refresh it. Come on, dude, go away. We'll go and click on add trigger, type SNS. We already have a topic and then we will add this. Okay, so now we have this topic. So SNS to lambda function is asynchronous invocation, and here we can go and change the retries to 1. We could leave it as 2. Okay, so here make sure that the retry attempts are 2. So first would be a try, and second time it will do a first retry, and the third time it will do a second retry. But that was not the case in SQS. So if you go to SQS, in SQS we had a receive count, maximum receives. So it would be received only 2 times. That's why there were 2 tries. There was not a try. There was no retry. There were 2 tries. Okay. So that's why the maximum receives is 2. And that's why you are able to see 2 tries here. But in case of asynchronous invocation from this SNS, you will be able to see only 2 tries. So let's make it, you would be able to see it will run 3 times. Okay, so now I will send this message uh, from SNS. I'll publish it. Let's give it some time to do the processing, and it will also do exponential back off, so it will take some time for the retries. So let's wait for a minute and I'll see you guys then. Okay, so the processing is completed. We can go to CloudWatch, click on the latest logs we have, and you can see it was able to try first time and do 2 retries. So these 2 other retries, the first one was a try. Okay, that's it for this one.